Story 1: Cognitive Behavioral Therapy. I am going to start by saying I am terrified of spiders. Actually, terrified is too mild of a word to describe it. In fact, it got to be so bad that my boss told me that if I did not overcome my fears, that they would have to fire me, since it was getting in the way of me working. People use the term phobia too lightly many times, but that is in essence what I suffer from: arachnophobia, an extreme and unreasonable fear of spiders. A good example is when I was going to the bathroom and a spider, a small one at that, or so I was told, crawled up the bathroom wall, and I jumped off of the toilet and ran stark naked through the apartment. I was lucky enough that my place had two bathrooms, and to this day I refuse to use the first one. Yet I digress. On my boss's prompting, I decided to try something called cognitive behavior therapy, or CBT for short. It is where not only are you trained against your fear, but in some cases even subjected to it. Now, at the time I thought this was a good idea, to the tune of $120 an hour, for about 12 to 16 sessions ranging from 1 to 2 hours apiece. It started out simple enough. The therapist tasked me questions about my fear, what triggered it, how often I freaked out, and even what sorts of stimulation brought on the fear. He frowned at me when I explained that even a picture of a spider would cause my skin to start crawling and send me into a full-blown anxiety attack. Then he smiled in what I assumed was his attempt at a reassuring manner. We started small. For the first session I was subjected to picture after picture of spiders, everything from the common den spider up to hobo spiders, St. Andrew's cross spiders, and redbacks. I couldn't even move from my position, even when the psychiatrist insisted that I touch the picture. This went on for hours. By the time my session was over, the doctor decided that I would need more than the standard 12 to 16 sessions. He even went as far as to hint at possible inpatient therapy options. How this struck me as odd. I really did want to overcome my fear. I had never heard of people being treated in hospital for something as minor as a phobia, even if an extreme one. However, when I looked back at the picture, I ignored my misgivings and agreed to the inpatient treatment. I was taken voluntarily to a psychiatric institution where I would receive every kind of therapy I could need. Shortly thereafter, everything went downhill. The first week was the same as the first appointment. Lots of pictures, and by the end I even touched a picture of the garden spider, although there was no way in hell I was going to touch the redback picture. I was so happy, but the psychiatrist felt that my progress was too slow. He asked me to sign a consent to try a radical therapy. He explained how he was going to take the Pavlovian therapy of classical conditioning and apply it to me. I was so excited to possibly be free of my horrid fear that I quickly signed the consent form. I didn't even read it, although now I wish to God that I had. As I said, the doctor wanted to apply the theory of Pavlov to my case. Classical conditioning is where the famous psychiatrist Dr. Pavlov trained his dog to salivate at the sound of a bell, causing him to anticipate food. That didn't seem too bad. I knew enough about how it worked from a college class I took in psychology. Again, this started out simply. I was bound to a bed and given a strong dose of Ativan, a medication that is used to calm anxiety. It put me in a kind of daze during which I was exposed to several images and models of those creepy crawlies. It actually wasn't so bad. It was kind of nice to look at them without going into an instant freak out. However, that is where the good ended. I began having nightmares, well, actually night terrors. I would scream horrendously for hours on end with no exit from the dreams. The dreams had a certain glowing look to them, and even though it was so dark in all of them, the glowing illuminated the things that I feared. At the foot of my bed, where I would be trapped by lengths of webbing, would stand the largest arachnid I had ever seen in my life. It would release its young from a pouch it had on its back. They would crawl over me. Those things would crawl into my mouth, my ears, and nose. I could feel them biting me everywhere that they walked. When I would awaken from the dreams, I would be covered in little bumps that my doctor told me were hives, all due to my irrational fear. Apparently, he said, my therapy was not going well. If my mind could cause such a systemic reaction to dreams, so he decided to push my therapy up a notch. I was told that they were taking away the Ativan and instead going to put me through the CBT without any drug to aid me. It was horrible. The hours that I was locked into the room with the therapist would become my new nightmare. I would be forced to touch the actual spiders. At the end of the session, I felt better, but only because I had eventually given in, even if only to make it stop. I would put my hand in the terrarium that held the little 8-legged freaks and wait for them to scuttle to my hand. I still had the night terrors, and they only grew worse. The spiders in my dreams got bigger and more ugly every time. Finally, after a month of this, the doctor said I would need to stay longer, and that due to my new symptoms of night terrors and hives, I would not be able to go out into the real world. He said that if I were to have a PTSD flashback due to the therapy or nightmares, the hospital would be at risk. I should have known something was wrong then and there. As far as I knew, you could always back out of therapy as long as it wasn't mandated, but with my lack of sleep I didn't think to question it. Eventually I began having terrors even in my waking hours. The doctors said that they were going to give me something stronger than the Ativan, but for some reason it had no effect. That giant creature continued to pester me. It would release waves of its young wattower. Whenever I was alone, they continued to bite me and even tried to create webs in my hair, over my eyes, and in my mouth. Within 3 months, there was nothing left of what had once been me. I had lost weight, my eyes were sunken in, and what was once just a phobia was now full-blown insanity. As those creatures continued to try and devour me, my therapy stopped. The medication and was not helping, but I didn't want the staff to take away the one thing that maybe kept me from being scared around other people. Finally, I snapped. I had enough. Nothing was being done to help me, and now my fear was hundreds of times worse than it ever was before. I began trying to kill myself every way you could think of. Hanging, slashing my wrists, overdosing on my sleeping pills. The staff stopped me each time, and I was tied to my bed eventually. For weeks I was left there, only seen occasionally by a passing psychiatrist. I stopped talking, and the giant spider continued to watch. Eventually they stopped coming around at all. For 3 days I didn't see a single soul. Suddenly there was a banging on the door. I had not seen the monster spider in almost 2 days, and I thought he was finally coming to finish me off. But it was only a cop. He called in a group of medics, who untied me and shipped me off to a hospital. When I got there, I could only hear whispers in horror. What had happened? Was I wrong in assuming that the spider was just a figment of my imagination? Was he real? Had he finished off all of the psychiatrists? I thought that I had my answer. When the head doctor explained that what I had was not hives, but rather thousands of tiny spider bites. Apparently the medication that the doctors had given me was working, only it was an antivenin for the redback spider, a creature indigenous to Western Australia and a relative of the black widow. It would seem that the redback spider's bite can cause hallucinations stretching for days on, and those bastards had intentionally exposed me to hundreds of baby redbacks, whose venom is more often than not dry or non-existent, and as of eliciting hallucinations from me. When I was released from the hospital, I found that I was still very afraid of spiders. I also discovered that the hospital I was locked in was a facility for testing out new biochemical weapons, mostly to try and cause intense and terrifying hallucinations against enemy military personnel. I hate spiders, and now I hate doctors. Story 2. Me out. This would be the second house tonight. He knew Corey would be angry. Sure, the man was always trying to stick to his rule book, and the first law of Corey was to avoid same-night hits. But they were running low on pretty much everything. Harry wasn't about to starve because of a stupid rule made over whiskey shots and a little pot. Besides pissing off an already touchy brother was just the cherry on top. It wasn't a big risk anyway. He wasn't across the city teasing the suburbs. This was canvassed down. If he pissed on a station wagon as hubcaps, he would probably get little more than a few cheers. Once back in their more exhilarated days, he and Corey had found a whole briefcase of tiny Coke baggies down here. Easy pickings, then ag. Hain. Corey hadn't stopped checking the windows for 2 weeks. Afterwards, whispering about the dealers in his damn sleep. Jumpy little fucker he was. Now Harry stood in front of the most rondo one house he could find that still had a number on it. He was on Miller Street, a dumpy lot of half-vacant homes, if you bothered to name them, as he stepped out of the faltering steamer, heat light and down the weedy, nearly non-existent front sidewalk. Barely worried about his surroundings this far from downtown, he peered vainly between the molded boards covering the front bay window. If this shack is completely empty, he thought, I might as well head back. On the flip side, it could be filled with merry crackheads. That was a risk he had to take. There was something special about this house, however. Occupying the front window was a small cardboard sign, meager yet significant. He could see some of its wash print through a gap in the wood. All's care. Harry could also make out a handwritten registered seal of approval poking out in the corner. There was a dull piece of rainbow topping the seal. It gave him the fucking creeps. Harry watched his footing carefully as he climbed the creaking front steps, avoiding patches of fallen concrete. The dips in the stone looked like they would devour his leg if possible. Biting down with rusty foundation wires, he laughed, glancing at the entranceway's doorbell slot, and considered knocking on the door. Easy pickings. The door opened before he could touch the knob, swinging with a press of his shoulder. The ease took him by surprise, and Harry reached for a crumbling barrier as he stumbled forward. The floor inside was completely collapsed, black except for a few stabbing lengths of smashed floorboard, who leaves a pothole in their front entranceway. Even the slummiest of idiots usually threw a board or two over gaping holes in their house. The pit did not reveal its th, but it was certainly dark enough as he bent down in an attempt to see past the blackness. The thick waft of putrid scent slapped him in the face. A dead rodent, he guessed. Suddenly his hand itched for the doorway behind him. There might be something worth his time in here, but man, this place smelled. The house reeked of inactivity. Moonlight was Harry's only guide as he tiptoed across the rotting wood, dodging more fallen floors and strange pits. Dust, thick and ancient, filled his nose as he gasped in the kitchen's doorway. A massive rat stood up in the sink it was nosing around in and scattered, leaving a trail of decomposing casserole behind it. He gagged as he stepped over another pitfall, holding his right arm to his nose as his left Ted as a leading companion. He noticed a glint, approached it, and found nothing but assorted silverware. Then, after a moment of near puking, he turned right around and quickly made his way back to the foyer. The kitchen was rancid. Now he caught himself looking longingly at the hanging front door, glancing at the fresh air outside. He shook his head, scolding himself for being such a coward. This house wasn't so different from some of the others he had been in. A little smell wasn't going to drive him home with his tail between his legs. Corey would never stop laughing. He changed direction and walked down the right hallway instead, checking each darkened room as he passed by. Thankfully, the floor seemed to be intact here. Harry began to get excited. He was starting to see some positive signs. Objects that might mean goodies. The first room belonged to a little girl or maybe a young teen. The walls were painted a dull, sick pink that flaked off dying bark. He could see a couple still coherent stuffed bears, a remnant pile of old books, and a TV dinner tray rotting beside an old dresser. In the center of the room, the largest hole yet spread its dark jaws under a bladeless ceiling fan. Across the room, rusted metal bars wrapped around the inside of a small window. Harry knew that the neighborhood was bad, but still uttered a low chuckle at the bars. The next room was like the first one with a few key differences. The similarity poked at his stomach, though he wasn't sure why. Instead of pink, a cold blue painted the walls, matching bars covered an identically tiny window, and the same bears stuffed the room. There was a hole in this room as well, but the pit was off-center and to the right instead. In the middle of the room lay at least 10 crammed cots, each one molded over and riddled with insects. How many damn kids did these idiots have? He stared at the black pit for a while longer before continuing down the hall. The last couple of doors had to be kicked open. The last one did not exist. The room at the end of the hallway was so plain that it stood out. Its walls seemed to be plastered and unpainted, and its floor contained no hole. A single, neatly folded bed sat in the corner, seemingly untouched by the house's atmosphere. Harry checked the room for any valuables, but found nothing. There was nothing really to search. No dresser, no bedside table, not even a closet or chest. He frowned and left, heading back into the blue room next door. The room seemed yet even more eerie from the inside. The bears watched him sadly as he stood in the center of the room, his feet next to one of the moldy cots. In a way, he almost felt trapped. It was as if the bars on the window were taunting him with their very presence. Then he saw it. The whole room was covered with the weeping blue paint. Everything but the edges of the window. There it had been scraped. Off claw marks stretched outwards on either side with half-chipped paint bordering each scratch and blood creasing in between. Suddenly the house didn't seem worth it. Before Harry could turn arrow on, the door slammed. He screamed and turned, bolting for the wood and slamming his fists against it. The lock had been snapped when he kicked the door in, and now someone was holding it against him. He could feel it give way a little bit with each hit before slamming back against its frame. "Hey," he bellowed, now attempting to shoulder in the door. There was no answer, only a whisper clicking as the door held back with impossible strength. "I'll kill you," he screamed. "Naughty, naughty," a voice whispered from the other side of the wood, breathing deeply with each slam against the wood. "You haven't learned your lesson. Time out isn't over yet." The voice gave Harry chills, and he pressed harder than ever. "Let me out." "Can't do that. Door must stay locked." "Time out isn't over yet. Not till you learn your lesson." Harry took a heavy step back, preparing himself to full-out tackle the door. His foot collapsed into the ground. Motion became a blur, and pain ripped at his legs as he found himself falling, collapsing through the rotted ground into darkness. He passed out. When Harry opened his eyes, the first thing he did was whip out his lighter. Angry and desperate, he flicked 3 times before the casino device divulged its flame. He wished it hadn't. He was in some kind of basement. There were no windows, no doors. All he could see beyond the shadows were odd shapes and piles of wood. He tried to turn, twisting his body to search his surroundings, only to find that his legs were unwilling to cooperate. One leg was severely displaced, a smooth white bit of his femur poking its curious face out of one side, while the other was penetrated by a sharp piece of floorboard or something he couldn't look long in. "Oh, to tell," Harry moaned and turned to his belly, sliding the lighter around as he moved. Above, he could see the original hole from the beau's room. Below it lay the shadowy outline of an obtuse mound, a pile of little, barely composed bodies. The beaux seemed to stare at him, the empty sockets pleading him to end their punishment, to finally let them out of the room decomposing around them. Harry whimpered and turned away, unable to look any more. He could now see the second pile of bodies just under the faint outline of the girl's room's hole. Now, you can't come out. You haven't learned your lesson." From above, the man's faint voice broke out again. Its delicate, routine charm echoed throughout Harry's new abyss as the Sioux, and of a door slowly swinging shut punctuated his dialogue. "Time out isn't over yet. Story 3. They just won't move. There's 3 of them outside. Hikers, probably, older maps usual. Why show a route over the motorway behind my house? But there isn't one anymore. I don't mind them usually. They just walk down and then walk back up a few minutes later, and I go and explain the situation to them. I saw these 3 early, so I hoped I could go out and talk to them before they walked down, save them the trip. They looked like a family, 1 man walking a little bit in front of 2 women, 1 just a teenager. The girls were looking at a map while he strode ahead, confident. It was late evening, the sun just barely falling behind the hill. Summer nights like this means the night comes late, I saw them from my window and walked around to my front door quickly. I put my hand on the handle and glanced outside through the glass. Then I stopped. I stopped because so had they. For a moment, I thought they had just stopped walking to check the map or something, but just the glimpse sent a chill through me, like something was just barely off. Uncanny Valley, right? I looked at them a little closer and saw that they had not just stopped. They had stopped mid-step. The one at the front had their front leg raised in the air, and the other were weirdly balanced forward, a positio, and that would be difficult to maintain. I assumed they had seen me and were doing some sort of performance, like those street performers that look like statues and maintain poses. Then I spotted it, the thing that had made my skin prickle. Their map was stuck. It was somewhere between the adult woman's hand and the floor, midair. It was not touching anything that I could see, and was completely still despite the strong breeze. My mind raced through the options. Wires wouldn't explain how it was so still. Maybe it was actually solid and only looked like thin paper. Either way, I let go of the handle. If they really were performers, no harm in staying inside and leaving them there. I had neighbors, so even if there was a problem, then other people would be aware. Oh, F it. I rationalized it to myself and turned away, unable to get rid of the throbbing cold in my stomach. I walked into my kitchen, made a mug of tea, and sipped it, trying to warm myself. Despite my already perfectly heated house, I couldn't help myself. I walked over to the window. They were still there, hadn't moved an inch, but I was closer now. Looking back, I wish my window had been further away. I wish it was thicker and soundproofed, but it wasn't, so I could hear them. The walkers were talking. I could see now, their mouths moving just a little to communicate in It was hard to make out words, but the mother and father were talking in an attempt at a calm tone to their daughter. She was sobbing. I felt a pang of sympathy, shame for ignoring them, and a rush of fear. I had ignored how wrong this felt before, but this was too much. I desperately wanted to go help them, to hug the daughter and tell her was okay. But I couldn't go out. Then it would happen to me. I'm not sure why, but I had the overwhelming feeling that the exact same thing would happen to me. It was getting even harder to see them. They had stopped moving as the sun set, and now they were only barely visible from the lights. In my house, I remembered my neighbors and looked down the street. I could see Maureen next door. She was looking out the window like I was. I tried to get her attention, but she was looking at the hikers. I usually avoided calling her. She was nice, but always had some new drama going on. She's just old and bored, so she tends to talk a lot, but we've been vague neighborly friends for a few years. However, I quickly picked up my phone and dialed her number. I saw her turn and walk out of sight before picking up. Hello. Hi, Maureen. It's just me, Patrick. Are you at home right now? Do you see those people outside my house? They've been standing out there for hours. It had only been minutes, an exaggerator as always. Yeah, I see them. Please don't go outside. I wasn't planning to. Bloody travelers would probably beat up an old woman. I think they're just hikers. No need to be worried. I think they are just I couldn't think of a good reason for why they were acting like that, but wanted to assuage her fears. Well, let's just try and figure out what they're doing, and if they need help, just don't go outside. Okay. I heard you the first time. You don't need to worry about me, Patrick. I'm going to call Albert to see if anyone further down the street saw where they caught me from. Okay, thanks, Maureen. Talk to you in a bit. Bye, dear. Click. I looked back out at them, almost impossible to see now. It was only because I knew they were there that I could even make out their shapes, and I could still hear them. They were louder now. I could make out a couple words, then just one, over and over. Help. I suddenly cursed living alone, wishing I could at least talk to someone. Maybe if there were houses on the other side of the street, I could at least communicate with the person across the street from me. But it was just open fields I used to like. That view, I looked down the street again and again. My spine felt like it was crawling out of my body. Maybe I have some sort of ability to spot things that were out of place in just a glance. But something else was wrong. The lights from the houses were out. The only lights that were on were the 3 closest houses on the right. I looked the other way, and they were all on all the way down the street. That's how it usually was until much later. In the night, I looked back and tried to see details in the blacked-out houses. Probably a power cut. But why was it just those ones? Wherein we all on the same grid? Then a flash, the furthest house's lights just went out, all of them at the same time, like a fuse had blown. I frantically reached for the phone and tried to call Maureen again, damning myself for not knowing the numbers of any of the further neighbors. It cut straight to an automated voice. The line was in use. I hung up and started pacing, looking out at the 2 remaining lit houses and glancing at the hikers outside. I couldn't see them, but I knew they were there. The voices were quieter, but they were talking still. Could they see me? I had no way of knowing. It was too late now. I should have tried to talk to them earlier. I let out a shriek as my phone burst into life. It was Maureen. Maureen, is that you? Are you okay? No need to shout. I'm fine. A sigh of relief cut short as the corner of my vision flashed. The next house had gone dark. It was only Maureen's house, lit on the right side. Did you talk to Albert? I tried to keep my voice level. I didn't want to panic her. Maybe it was just a power cut. He picked up, but then started talking nonsense. He said his arthritis was acting up worse than usual. He couldn't move. Something about a power cut. He wanted me to call an ambulance. But you know how Albert is, hypochondriac. I think we should go check on him. And her lights went to Maureen, Maureen, are you still there? I could hear her breathing. Patrick, something's wrong. I can't turn around. It's okay, Maureen. Just a power cut. You're just scared. There's something scratching. What? My voice sounded like a child who just heard the monster under their bed talk. On my door. That's just your cat. The door is open. Then she screamed. I pulled the receiver away from my ear as the loud, piercing shriek filled the air. I could hear it from the phone and from the house directly. Maureen, I sounded distant from myself. Click. I'm not sure if I hung up or she did. I looked out my window, trying to see the hikers. They were quiet now. They probably heard it, too. I felt like I was in a daze. I stumbled over to my sofa and sat stiffly. My laptop was open next to me. Half-finished work on the glowing screen. I deleted it and started typing. I'm not sure why no one saw this coming. Maybe I could warn someone. I typed frantically, fingers moving faster than in all the work I had ever done. Then a flash, and my lights went out. The only light was the glow of the screen. My fingers could still move, but I couldn't stand up. I could talk, I know, because I screamed. I dare not make any sound now. My laptop is still plugged in and getting power. This isn't a power cut. I haven't heard the hikers since the scream. I hope they're okay. The only thing I can hear is the clicking of the keys and the scratching at my door. Story 4. What I forgot. I awoke to the sound of thunder rumbling in the distance. I smiled to myself, relishing the quasi-rational excuse to sleep in. I could see light through my closed eyelids and hear the seagulls squawking nearby. If it wasn't about to rain, I would probably encourage myself to get up and outside to do some yard work. Spring was finally managing to punctuate a particularly long and snowy Maine winter. I had things to sweep and rake and plant outside. It would have to wait for another Saturday. I stretched my legs out while cozily snuggling further under the blanket. I swept my feet across the foot of the bed, but was impeded by a firm object blocking my path. Slightly annoyed, but not at all surprised, I pushed my cat over with my foot so my tall frame could take advantage of the full length of the bed. She reacted to this rude awakening by standing up, stretching her muscles, and settling back down for more sleep. I should probably mention that sleep doesn't come easily to me, and when it's disturbed I can be pretty unpleasant. I've had a problem with insomnia for as long as I can remember and take medicine to help me sleep. It works pretty well, and I always try to get enough sleep at night so I don't fall asleep driving and hurt someone. These current pills seem to make me more forgetful than I used to be, but I can live with that. Not being able to sleep is worse. As I was drifting back towards unconsciousness, my ears suddenly registered a muffled noise coming from somewhere. It was a monotonous beeping, like that of an alarm clock. Knowing it wasn't mine, I lay still trying to ignore it, patiently waiting for its owner to wake up and turn it off. After about 10 minutes, I rolled over on my back and groaned, accepting the fact that I wasn't going back to sleep. So much for cozily and napping with my cat during the thunderstorm. The sound was, as I was now clearly aware, coming from my neighbor's apartment above me. I lay staring at the ceiling for several more minutes, silently haunting him, and finally decided to get up. I sleepily walked into the kitchen to start a pot of coffee, my bare feet quietly padding on the old wood floor. I took a shower and sat down at my kitchen table with a steaming cup of coffee, carefully sipping it. As I quietly sat trying to finish waking up, I realized I could still hear the alarm from upstairs. I looked at the clock. 10:11. The alarm had started at 9:30. Jesus, that guy must be capable of sleeping through anything. If the alarm is loud enough for me to hear it, it must be blasting in his ears up there. Maybe he died, I thought with a wicked smile, or, as I continued to postulate, he's a jerk who went out of town without turning his alarm off. Probably that one. I finished my cup of coffee and stepped out my front door, fully intending to yell at this guy if he was home I clomped angrily up the wooden stairs leading to his front porch. When I reached the top, I could see through the window in his door that his apartment was dark inside. I peered in the window, and I examined the lifeless interior. I knocked and waited. No answer. I knocked again twice, both times receiving no indication that anyone was home. I walked over to his window and, upon trying to open it, found that it slid up easily. I leaned down and called in. Hello, no answer. I called once more. Lo, Uder. I listened for any sound coming from inside, but there was nothing, apart from the beeps of his alarm. From my position at the window, I could see into his bedroom, and that his bed was unoccupied. I debated for a moment and decided I might as well pop in and turn the alarm off. I'd come this far, and the damnable thing was sitting roughly 20 unimpeded steps from me. He'll never have to know his privacy was violated, I reasoned. I opened the window as far as it would go and climbed through. I stopped and listened to make sure I wasn't about to be chased out by a frightened guy with a bat. Nope, still nobody home. I went into his bedroom where the alarm was blaring and saw clothes scattered on the floor. Dude's kinda messy, but that's not that unusual, I suppose. I walked over and turned the alarm off. Silence. My ears rang as they adjusted to the newly silent apartment. The peaceful sound of ocean waves caressing my ears from the open window. I took a curious look in his bathroom and saw more mess, bottles, and things lying around on the counter and floor. Kinda looks like someone was looking for something or packing in a hurry. As my eyes finished scanning the room, I suddenly felt something soft touch my leg. I jumped back with a frightened shriek, only to find a cat looking up at me inquisitively. Sheesh. Thing just took 10 years off my life. Given the rushed state of affairs in the apartment, I wondered if the guy remembered to feed the cat before leaving. I went back to the kitchen and found the cat's food bowl overflowing under a pile of food. The bag of food was sitting overturned next to the bowl. Something in the back of my mind gnawed at me, making me increasingly uncomfortable. The longer I stayed in here, the more I risked being caught in. My breaking and entering foray, my curiosities and Samaritan duties now satisfied, I climbed back through the window, closing it behind me. I leaned against the balcony rail, enjoying the satisfaction of having successfully completed my stealth mission. Man, this bastard is lucky, I thought. His balcony has a nice view of the ocean over the neighboring houses and treetops. I surveyed dark clouds looming in the distance, now noticeably closer than before. I'd almost forgotten the encroaching storm. As if on cue to remind me, a crack of thunder echoed across the sky, interrupting the quiet as I listened to the rumble get quieter and quieter. The same sense of unease I felt before came creeping back, although this time I couldn't pin it on a fear of being caught. It was quiet. To quiet, I kept listening for several seconds, fully expecting to hear some kind of noise. Given that I am in the middle of the city, I should be hearing all manner of sounds right now. I strained to hear a car, a dog barking, music playing, people talking, anything, but there was none. Not even birds, which I found disturbing. Just the roar of the ocean and the thunder. How long had it been this quiet? I didn't notice it before. I'm pretty introverted and also work from home, so I can go days without talking to another human being. And when I do it. It's usually the cashier at the grocery store, but this was unnerving. Right now, all I wanted was to hear someone's voice. I called out to no one in particular. Hello, hello, my shaky voice echoed through the trees and nearby houses. There was no response. The only contact with life I'd had since waking up was with 2 cats. Loneliness was beginning to soak into me like cold water, and a sound, like static on an old television, invaded my ears as the panic rose in my throat. And that's when I heard it. Or rather, stopped hearing it. You know how sometimes when you hear a noise go on long enough, it seems to fade away into the background of your subconscious even though it's still there? Like a loud smoke detector chirping, or locusts in a forest, or the nose of an electric fan. Only when the noise stops do you become aware of it. Maybe that's what happened. Or maybe my mind blocked it out to protect me from the dread I'm feeling. It doesn't matter now anyway. I slowly began backing away from the balcony rail, my mind reeling, until I bumped into the damp vinyl lounge chair behind me. I didn't hear the sound of the chair's legs scraping against the boot as I collapsed into it, my legs finally giving way beneath me. My stunned mind desperately tried to explain the noise away as something else, replaying it again and again from where it still lingered in my cloudy memory, burning like ash, making my eyes water. But the sound was undeniable. It was the city's emergency alarm, the one they use to alert you of some impending disaster. When I finally accepted that, my memory made a connection. The emergency weather bulletin that came on as I was drifting to sleep last night. Something about a major storm and massive ocean swells. As the sobering reality washed over me, the static in my ears was reaching deafening levels. But it wasn't my panic, it was the ocean. My memory quite often fails me, but usually not quite so colossally, not with such finality. A sick feeling of regret tore at me, leaving me in my final moments with only my eternal yet fleeting remorse and the shame at being the cause of my own demise. I slowly got up and walked over to the edge of the balcony to look in the direction of the ocean. A monstrous, unforgiving wave was colliding with my abandoned neighborhood. My heart sank. I was alone. Story 5. Succession of nightmares. Nightmares. We all have them, one time or another. Everything has a dark side. Our dreams were meant to be a place of jubilation and contain our most wonderful fantasies. This is kinda like an award. Some of us work our asses off all day long and then come home to a nice cozy bed. Sleep by itself is a nice gift for our turmoils, but dreams make sleeping hard for us to want to wake up sometimes. But there is, of course, a dark side. There is always a dark side. Nightmares have a certain way of creeping up on us when we don't want them to. It's almost like they know. Some may say that nightmares are our own fault. Watching scary movies or reading scary stories can fuel our nightmares. But, what if there are things out there that can control our dreams? What if there are beings who can purposely give us nightmares? What if these things are there to drive us insane, to the point where we want to sleep forever? Now is when I tell you about my nightmares. A couple weeks ago I started to get really into reading creepy stories. All humans have this certain want of excitement, but sometimes we take it way too far. You know what I'm talking about. Surfing videos on the internet late at night, reading creepy stories or making our own stories. You know how it works. You sit there, tired in front of your computer. The room is dark. The voices in your head are telling you to shut off the computer and finally get some fucking sleep. But then it happens. You find a video that has a creepy description. Perhaps a video about a ghost encounter or a video of aliens. This is how my nightmares started. My friend Zoc has a YouTube account where he plays video games and gives them commentary, let's play. But one day he decided to do something different. He narrated a story off of a website called, I have heard of this somewhere, I know I have. It's hard to surf the internet for so many years and not hear about something so popular. He told a story of a man called Slender Man. Now, I obviously heard of this character. I've seen the Marble Hornets videos, and I've seen the fan art and the so-called pictures. The story was interesting, and it made me want to read more, so I did. Within a few days, I had read all the popular stories that this website had to offer. Squidward suicide, Ben drowned, dead Bart Chef, the killer, the Tails doll, Smile Dog, and all the Pokemon hacks. These stories, they give you a feeling of terror. You start to notice all the small things around you, all the creaks and moans. You look over your shoulder and think you see a shadow of some sort. Nothing. How silly you finally get the courage to go to sleep, and then you start to understand the position you just put yourself in. I understood what I was doing to myself. But I didn't stop. I saw them all. I saw all the creatures from those stories in my dreams. I saw the Smile Dog try to make me spread the word. I saw Jeff telling me to go to sleep. Squidward staring at me with his bloodshot eyes, jerking myself a whack. Every time I encountered one of these freaks, got old real fast. But then the nightmares began to get so much more real. No longer was I imagining the characters from the stories, but now my nightmares were taking their own shape, contorting themselves to make me even more uncomfortable. One night I was laying soundly in my bed. It was almost like an out-of-body experience, you see. I had a bird's eye view of myself. It was as if I was laying on the ceiling. I was laying on top of the covers, and my eyes were closed. I must note that I was not breathing, no snoring, no indication of my stomach rising and lowering. In fact, I was utterly motionless. My room was pitch black as it usually is when I fall asleep, but I could see myself perfectly. It's as if I had some type of neg HD vision, but it wasn't all green and shit like it usually is. Then my eyes shot wide open. It startled me a bit. I just stared up at the ceiling. It seemed as if he was looking at me. Like Elia was on the ceiling. A drop fell, a ruby-colored drop of blood fell onto my face. Then another, and another, and another. The drops began to fall slow, but then they picked up speed. Similar to when rain begins to fall. The version of myself laying on my bed then begins to smile. The blood soaks his teeth and started to drip into his eyes. But he did not blink or close his mouth, just let the blood fall on him. Suddenly the view switched to me, being on the ceiling. Now I was the one laying on the bed. On the ceiling was a bloody, mangled, wounded version of me. My eyes were missing, and my teeth were missing as well. But I had the same smile as the version of myself on the bed. My hands and legs were pinned to the ceiling, almost as if I was being crucified. then T. His view began to slowly zoom in on my face. Blood still fell, and my view was being distorted. I wanted to see what was going to happen, so I tried my best to see the view then zoom in on my face at an alarming rate. And then I spoke. I am your God now. I woke up, breathing fast and hard. I felt paralyzed, like I was stuck. I felt liquid around me. Did I really just piss the bed from this nightmare, or was it blood? I quickly jumped up and found out that I had knocked over a cup of tea in my sleep, and I was laying in it. Sometimes when I have dreams, I feel as if the interactions of objects in the real world affect my dream. In one dream, I was being stabbed repeatedly in the arm, and I could actually kind of feel it. I awoke to my friend obnoxiously poking me in the arm with a pen. I thought that him poking me in the arm made the stabbing from the nightmare be all the more real. Since dreams and nightmares are derived from our brains, we can experience things in your dreams that seem real. When you eat something, you can taste it. This is because you remember how the object tasted. This dream made me not want to sleep anymore that night, so I didn't. But that wasn't the end. I had this same nightmare over and over again for a few days, happening the same way every time. There wasn't anything I could do. I couldn't change the dream even if I wanted to. This nightmare scared me every time. You think I would have got used to it, but I didn't. I began to think about ways I could avoid this nightmare. This was my first odd. I can't remember ever having a nightmare while I was napping during the day. So my first plan was to sleep during the day and stay up during the night. Hopefully this would work. First day. No nightmare. I was relieved. I thought that I had found the solution. I had no problem sleeping during the day. I didn't sleep much as it was already. Second day, my plan failed. The same nightmare happened again. But this time there was no smiling from the body on the ceiling. Actually, there were no emotions at all. My head was missing. More blood fell quickly this time, making the dream end faster. My body laying on the bed looked down, and my decapitated head was laying in my lap, and it was smiling. I'm pissed now. What? I just can't fucking sleep anymore. Fine, I won't. I'll stay awake. Yes, that will work. I'll stay awake until I pass out from exhaustion. I won't encounter the nightmare unless I absolutely have to. I wrote this quite a while ago, back when the nightmares first started. It's been about a week since I decided I wasn't going to sleep. I'm so tired. I don't think I can stay awake anymore. My bed sounds so heavenly right now. I guess my plan didn't work how I thought it would. I'm going to go to bed now. I think I could stay up for a few more hours, but I don't want to. I want to see my smile. I want to see my bloody body hang from the ceiling. It sounds so interesting to me now. Oh, how that blood felt so refreshing, cascading on my face. I have a bottle of pills, extra strength. I'm going to take them all with some alcohol. I don't want to be awake anymore. I've been awake for a couple days, and I now realize how horrifying it is. I'm seeing all those creepypasta characters in real life now. I've gone completely fucking insane. I know they won't be there in my dream. They were never there before. I'll sleep forever, so I can look and smile at my God for the rest of days. I just swallowed the pills. I'm going to have a quick drink, then I'm going to bed. Why not join me? It will be your God. Soon enough. Story 6. Thomas, 4-year-old Shade, Godwit always loved her teddy bear named Thomas. He was a brown bear with a blue raincoat and tea. She had him since she was a baby. Her parents got it from an eccentric old woman's yard sale before she was born. There were rumors that the eccentric woman was actually a witch, but they ignored people. They told others that being a witch didn't necessarily mean evil. Every night Shade would cuddle with the fuzzy bear and felt so safe. She also took him everywhere that she went. He was never out of her sight. To this child, this stuffed bear was her best friend, but she didn't realize how much she needed him until that horrifying night. It was Friday day, exactly midnight. There was the sound of a window shattering, and Shade awoke with a start. Behind her closed door, she heard her dad's heavy footsteps creeping downstairs, and she was curious, too, what was going on, but she was too scared to move. She just sat up in her bed, tightly holding Thomas, and called out, "Daddy." Her dad had yelled, "Who's there?" Then he abruptly let a horrendous scream, and there was a loud sound like a body collapsing onto the floor. Shade began crying. Her mom ran towards Shade's door and her hand on the knob, but her mom screamed, and it sounded like somebody dragged her away from the door. Suddenly, all was silent. Shade was crying harder now, but she had managed to get out of bed and quietly open the door. She crept out of her room with Thomas in her arms, and she saw her mom laying face down across the hall. Shade then ran to her. It would have been obvious to anyone else that the woman was dead, but to an innocent, naive child, she was just asleep. "Mommy," cried Shade, shaking her mom frantically. "Please wake up. Mommy, Mommy." Shade accidentally pushed her dead mom onto her back, and she saw a terrifying sight. Her mom's blood and intestines slowly oozed out of her stomach, and the white of her eyes was the only thing that stared back at her little daughter. Blood got on her hand, and she tried desperately to wipe it off on her pajama bottoms without success. Shade shrieked and sobbed hysterically, "Mommy is hurt, Thomas. We have to call for help." Holding Thomas close, she ran downstairs and to her Ned on the light in the kitchen. She saw her dad laying on his back in the front of the smashed-back sliding door, his body being completely gutted, and his head was severed crudely with his tongue hanging out. Blood was splattered everywhere, and the floor was very slippery. Trying not to fall, she was weeping even harder now that she could barely breathe. "I'm scared, Thomas," she said, helplessly, not fully comprehending the situation. "I'm scared." Then, her stomach turning with fright, she barfed on top of the gore on the floor. "It's all right, Shade," said a friendly-sounding voice, wiping away the bile from her mouth with her sleeve. She looked around fretfully but saw no one. Then she looked down at Thomas. "Don't be scared," she heard Thomas say. "I am here with you." His lips were actually moving. "Thomas," she exclaimed excitedly, "you're talking." She wasn't afraid by this. Like most children her age, she still believed in magic, and she always thought that her bear was magical somehow. She could always see it in his sapphire eyes. "Yes," he said warmly, "to help you. Now call for help like you said. The evil is here." She dashed to the phone. She had learned at preschool what to do during an emergency and had memorized the number faster than her classmates. She put the receiver to her ear and tried pressing 911, but there was no dial tone. "It's broken," she whimpered. "Let me listen," said Thomas. Shade held the receiver up to his ear. "The line is dead," he confirmed. She was beginning to cry again when they heard footsteps approaching. "Turn off the light and hide under the table," Thomas whispered, gripping onto him tightly. She turned off the light and darted underneath the kitchen table. A demonic man entered the kitchen. His eyes were a blazing orange. His teeth were so jagged that they could rip into human flesh and bone. His jet black hair was long and reached to the floor, and his twisted and deformed face had blood all over it. He was also wearing a flowing red cloak, and he was holding a red cane. She'd thought that he was the devil that the priest at her church always warned them about. With a low, monstrous, scratchy voice, he then said, "Where are you, little girl? I can hear you." She was shaking like a leaf as she watched the evil man. Acute fear consumed little Shade, and Thomas whispered words of comfort, but there was no use. She was so afraid that she beat down her leg and sobbed uncontrollably. Smelling her, the man crept towards the table. "Please be quiet," Thomas told her desperately. "You'll be safe." She tried to cover her own mouth, but it was too late. Along with smelling her urine, the man also heard her breathing heavily. Suddenly, he bent down and tried to grab at her, cackling and shouting, "Peekaboo!" She screamed in horror and backed away from underneath the table. She clumsily stood up, and he began to chase her. She tried to run out, but when she ran out to the entrance way, she would only be back in the kitchen. The man would just cackle loudly. "What's happening?" she bawled as the monstrous man chased her. "I want Mommy and Daddy. It's a trick," explained Thomas. "I got you now, girl," the man said with a demented smile, coming closer. "Get the salt," Thomas said suddenly, being tremendously frightened and confused. She exclaimed, "Salt?" "Why, yes, salt," replied Thomas. "Salt protects you from evil things." "Where is it?" she asked. "Your daddy was using it when he was cooking your dinner, and he left it on the counter," he replied. She went towards the counter, sliding across the bloody floor and being out of reach of the wicked man for a second, and Dee quickly grabbed the black container. She asked, "Is this it?" "Yes," answered Thomas. Continuing to run, she then asked, "Now what?" "Now let go of me," Thomas instructed. "Pour salt in your palms and throw handfuls in his face." "I'm too scared," she said. "You can do it," Thomas coaxed. "I know you can." Reluctantly, she stopped running, gently dropped Thomas onto the floor, turned around, poured some salt into her hands, and threw it in the man's face. The man howled in pain as his flesh sizzled. Moving backwards, she kept throwing salt at the man. Each time his face burned and bubbled, she thought that she was beating the monster man until she realized to her dismay that the container was empty. The man smiled and came at her. "I can't wait, T." "Oh, hear you squeal for mercy," laughed the man, trying to grab her hair. She ducked and bolted towards Thomas. "The salt is all gone," she cried, picking him up. "Throw me at him," Thomas told her, speaking rapidly as the man was coming near. "I'll take care of him, but you'll get hurt," she said worriedly. "No, I won't," he assured her. "Trust me." Kissing the top of his head, she said tearfully, "You're so brave." As the man was getting inches closer, she tossed Thomas at him. He glided in the air, his hat, coat, and eyes turning pure black and his smile turning into a fierce fang expression. He landed on the man's face and began attacking. Like a wild animal, he bit, scratched, and tore into his face, and the man was screaming in agony and backing away. "Get off, beast!" the man roared. With Thomas still on his face, the man ran out of the kitchen. Shade didn't follow until she heard an explosion in the family room. She rushed in and saw a massive cloud of fire and smoke. "Thomas!" she screamed. Then the fire and smoke disappeared. The evil man was nowhere to be found, but Thomas was laying on the floor, his clothing and eyes back to normal color. She ran to him. There were no burns or tears on him, but she was still concerned. Hugging him, she asked, "Are you okay?" "Yes," Thomas smiled, "I'm all right, and the demon is G1 now, being covered in pee and her parents' blood." She felt exhausted and emotionally drained. She curled up into a ball in a corner, sobbed loudly, and snuggled with Thomas. He softly sang to her until she fell asleep. The neighbors, hearing strange sounds in the night, they called for help, and the police found Shade in minutes. After staying in the hospital for a week, she was placed in a foster home. No one believed her when she told them what happened, and Thomas never uttered another word after that night. People told her that it was just a bad man that killed her mom and dad, and that she imagined Thomas talking to her, but she didn't care though. She knew the truth. Each night, she would lovingly hold Thomas close to her, knowing that nothing could harm her as long as he was there. Story 7. And since I heard stories of this ritual happening throughout the internet and decided to try it for myself, since the tasks are not hard to do and the payout is worth the trouble. The materials to complete this task will cost around $10 to $15, which can be earned from working any sort of job. I'll save the reward for the end because the sacrifice will go along with it, and telling you now might deject you from attempting this ritual, but I assure you that it is well worth it. Failure to either complete this ritual or doing a step wrong will not harbor any sort of consequence, short of losing $10 to $15 of regular money, depending on how far you get through the process. The only time limit is that the shop will only be open between 9 at night and 6 in the morning. The first thing you will want to do is find the small incense shop that will sell you the materials. The shop will be present in any sort of city, or so I'm told. As of now, the cities that definitely have the stores are Los Angeles, Las Vegas, Chicago, Miami, Seattle, Washington, D.C., San Antonio, and Salt Lake City. If you find one in your city and it's not listed above, you may retell this story and include your city, but only if you want to. If not, whatever. The shop will not be attached to any other store and will be located in the outskirts of the city. It will not have any sort of neon sign and will not advertise at all. You can tell if you've found the correct place if it has one of 3 markings near the entrance. It's either have a red door W. The gold I painted on it be a small wooden plaque with an eagle on it with a golden I painted onto said eagle, or see a welcome mat with the eagle mentioned above painted on it. The eagle means nothing, but THEI is supposed to signify a calm mind. When you've found the place, merely enter the shop. There is no special knock password, or any other fancy shenanigans. It was pretty nice, actually, considering the fancy antics that you have to do with most of the other rituals. Upon entering the shop, you'll notice the faint smell of aroma. There will be no music playing, though you may hear other customers in the shop. If you do hear other customers, leave the shop and come back the next day. You'll approach the counter and ring the bell. An intimidating black man will come out of the black room and ask you what you want. You'll tell him that you want 3 distinct kinds of incense in a commanding voice and lay a $5 bill on the table. You must specific. I ask for Satya Sai Baba Nag Kampa Garbati, Satya Super Hit, and Sri Sai Flora. He'll go into the back room and retrieve the incense. When he returns, he lines take your $5 bill and ask if that'd be all for you. You'll tell him no and slap another $5 on the table. You'll then ask for an incense box to go along with your incense. He'll go into the back room once again and retrieve a normal wooden incense box, which will be about 2 feet long and have holes cut into the top. There may be a pattern near the bottom of the box, but that is unimportant. Inspect the box. If it is in perfect condition, place it back on the table and ask for another one. But take your $5 bill back and slap a 10 down. He'll take your 10 and tuck the box back into the back room. He'll come back out with another box. This box will have a broken hinge, but will still open and close. You are to tell the man that this box is perfect. Collect your things and leave immediately. There have been records that the man will give you the broken box first and you'd end up saving $5. But it didn't for me to just fork over the other thief. And don't complain, I'm serious. Don't complain, you may fix the hinge if you want, but it won't be important. What you'll then do is drive back home and set your incense up in a dark, quiet place. You are to burn 1 stick of incense from whichever box you chose, but it must only be 1, not 1 from each. 1. What this does is calm you down for the next step. When the 1 incense stick is done burning, I'm stressing the 1 rule because those that have burned 2 or more did not complete the ritual correctly and were out there 10 to 15 box. You are to inspect the box. On the side of the box there will be a small sliver of wood that swings out, revealing a secret compartment of the box. There will be an extra packet of incense sticks in that compartment. These sticks will be black and have a red handle. You are to burn 1 of these next. Don't worry about having to burn 2. 1 will get the job done. While you are burning 1 of these incense sticks, you'll notice that the smell is anything but appetizing. It smells like rotting meat to me. You are to close your eyes and bear through the smell. When the stick is done burning, which might take 5 minutes, you are to up. In your eyes, you'll find yourself back in the shop, but in the back room, the man will meet you here sitting in whatever chair or position you were sitting in. He'll show you 1 of 2 things. The first is a small glass of liquid. This liquid is an elixir that allows your mind to never feel stress again. Your judgment will never be clouded. You will never be angry, and you will always feel kindness coming from everyone. Your fight or flight sense will still be present, but it will be quicker. You will feel calm and blissful for as long as you live. The other it'll be a small book. This book will hold the secrets to everything. It will have the answers to why humans are here. the afterlife, and every other controversy will be immediately revealed to you upon reading the contents of the book. You will literally know everything after picking the item you want. You're to close your eyes again and wait 10 seconds. You will open your eyes again in your living space with the faint smell of incense lingering in the atmosphere, but whichever item you chose will still be in your hand. Here's the catch. If you chose the elixir, everything you encounter will feel like it's lasting twice as long as before. Your mind will not feel anger, but it will feel boredom. Your hour-and-a-half classes will feel like 3. 60 minutes will now take 2 hours. The upside, as mentioned above, will always be that you have inner peace, but activities that you find boringly unbearable will feel like they last forever. It's somewhat contradicting if you think about it, but it will only be those activities that you find boring. Anything you find painful or even enjoyable will feel like ecstasy. One thing you should remember, however, is that the normal rules of physics still apply, so while the flame may feel like a massage in your mind, you'll still end up with 2nd or 3rd degree burns if left unattended. If you chose the book, you'll know everything, but will forever be unable to tell anyone. Anyone else will see the book as nothing more than a blank template, and you'll find yourself unable to speak if you try verbally telling Anyon of the book's content. You'll know who killed Kennedy, but you alone you'll know if we really landed on the moon, but will be unable to type it out on your computer. You'll know if our best friend's girlfriend really cheated on him, and whether or not she really did contract herpes in the process or not, but will be at a loss of words when the conversation comes up. I chose the book. If it's any consolation, it's intriguing to know all of these facts. I know which religion to pick, how to live my life, and even who killed Kennedy. It sucks that I can't tell you, though. You'd shit bricks if I told you. But whenever I try, my fingers burn at the touch of the keys. I should know. I've tried it twice within the last 10 minutes. I can't even give you subtle hints. I know why, but telling you that would also reveal secrets of the book, and that girlfriend reference came from a true story. My best friend won't even talk to me since I froze when he asked me about his girlfriend. And when I tried to tell him, my throat ran dry and I had to run for water. But my throat just dried right back up again when I tried to tell him the truth again. I lied to him and said no, but then he found out the truth and thinks that I was the one that cheated with her. I tell him otherwise, but he doesn't believe me. I'm thinking I should have chosen the elixir.